The 4 worst and the 5 best Mercedes models to own. Owning a Mercedes can be the dream of your life or your worst financial nightmare. The star on the hood no longer guarantees invincibility. Today, the difference between an eternal German tank and a luxury trap with an expiration date is razor thin. Congratulations. If you buy the wrong model, you're not purchasing a car. You're signing up for eternal debt with your mechanic. But not everything is bad, because first, we're going to tear apart the 4 worst models you should never touch. But don't go away, because later, we'll reveal the 5 mechanical gems that are worth every penny. Let's get started. Number 4. Mercedes-Benz CLS, 2012 to 2018. The second-generation Mercedes-Benz CLS, internally known as the W218, is probably one of the most beautiful cars ever to roll off an assembly line. With its sedan silhouette with a coupe sole and its fluid lines, it's a vehicle that turns heads on every corner. But as the saying goes, not all that glitters is gold, and in the case of the CLS, beauty comes with a maintenance cost that borders on absurd. This model represents the exact moment when Mercedes decided that style and technological complexity should outweigh mechanical simplicity and long-term durability. One of the biggest pain points for any CLS owner is the air suspension system known as Airmatic. On paper, it's a marvel that allows the car to float over road imperfections, but in practice it's a financial time bomb. The rubber airbags have an almost programmed tendency to develop micro cracks once the vehicle surpasses 80,000 kilometers or 6 years of age. When this happens, the system's compressor has to work twice as hard to maintain the car's height, eventually burning out the compressor motor. Repairing a full Airmatic system at an authorized workshop can easily cost between $5,000 and $7,000. Seeing your car collapsed on one of its wheels in the morning is one of the most frustrating and expensive experiences a car enthusiast can face. But the problems don't end with the suspension. Regarding powertrains, the CLS often came with the 4.6-liter V8 biturbo engine, a performance beast, but a preventive maintenance nightmare. This engine suffers from chronic issues with timing chain tensioners and oil control valves. If you hear a metallic rattling when starting the car cold, it's a sign the chain is hitting the internal housings. If not addressed immediately, the engine can jump timing and destroy itself entirely, which would result in a replacement bill often exceeding the vehicle's residual value. Additionally, oil leaks at the camshaft position sensors are extremely common. The oil can travel through the wiring via capillarity to the engine control unit, short-circuiting the car's brain and leaving the owner with a $3,500 repair for something that started as a small drop of oil. The interior, although luxurious, is not exempt from criticism. The infotainment system from this era begins to show its age not only in speed, but also in physical reliability. Screens often develop dead pixels, and the central console rotary controls tend to break internally, leaving the driver unable to operate the navigation or audio. It's a car that demands a deep pocket and infinite patience, becoming the perfect example of why you should never buy a high-end used Mercedes without an extended warranty or a fully documented maintenance history down to the last bolt. Number 3. Mercedes-Benz CLA, first generation. When Mercedes-Benz launched the first-generation CLA, its goal was clear: to attract a younger audience and capture buyers who had never been able to afford a car with the star at the front. The marketing was flawless, positioning it as the smaller, rebellious sibling of the CLS. However, to achieve that lower entry price, Mercedes had to cut corners in areas that traditionally defined the brand, resulting in a vehicle that many purists consider a Mercedes in name only. The first major reality check for the owner of a first-generation CLA is the quality of the interior materials. Upon entering, you are greeted by hard plastics in the lower areas and a dashboard that, over the years and heat, begins to creak and produce annoying noises. Soundproofing is noticeably inferior to that of a C-Class or E-Class, generating a louder, less refined driving experience than one would expect from a German luxury manufacturer. This is where you start noticing that you're paying for the emblem, not for the craftsmanship that made the brand famous. Mechanically, the CLA featured a front-wheel drive layout that was controversial on its own, but the real problem lies in its 7-speed dual-clutch transmission. In models produced between 2014 and 2017, the shifting logic of this gearbox can be erratic, especially in heavy city traffic. Drivers often report harsh jerks when shifting from first to second gear, and worrying delays when attempting to accelerate quickly. These transmissions require fluid and filter changes every 60,000 kilometers, and skipping this maintenance is a death sentence for the internal clutches. Rebuilding one of these units costs over $4,000, a disproportionate figure compared to the car's current market value. The turbocharged four-cylinder engine, although efficient, is not free from faults. The most common and costly issue is related to the crankcase ventilation system and thermostat. The thermostat in these models has a plastic housing that tends to crack, causing coolant leaks that, if not detected in time, can lead to engine overheating. Additionally, carbon buildup on the intake valves is intrinsic to these direct injection engines, requiring a professional walnut shell cleaning every 50,000 to 60,000 kilometers to maintain power and fuel economy. Finally, ergonomics and space are a constant compromise. The sloping roof design makes the rear seats almost unusable for adults, and rear visibility is practically non-existent. At the end of the day, the first-generation CLA feels like a car designed by the accounting department, not engineering. It's a vehicle that may look attractive in a social media photo, but, in daily use, reveals its weaknesses, constantly reminding you that in the world of luxury cars, cheap almost always ends up being very expensive in the long run. Number 2. Mercedes-Benz S-Class W220. The Mercedes-Benz S-Class has historically been the flagship of the global automotive industry, the vehicle where technologies debut that the rest of us will see in our everyday cars 10 years later. However, the generation known as the W220, produced from the late 1990s to the mid-2000s, represents the lowest point in this lineage. It was the result of an era of aggressive cost-cutting under Daimler-Chrysler management, where over-engineering was replaced by poorly executed electronic complexity and weather protection that bordered on negligent. This car pioneered the integration of a massive number of electronic control modules communicating via fiber optics. The problem is that these systems are extremely sensitive to voltage variations, and worse, to moisture. In S-Class models from this era, the drains under the windshield often get clogged with leaves and dirt. When this happens, water is redirected straight into the cabin, flooding the carpets where critical control units and data bus connectors are located. A simple rainstorm can result in a car going haywire. Lights turn on by themselves, seats move without intervention, and eventually the vehicle enters a protection mode that locks the transmission. Drying and replacing these modules can cost over $6,000, and often the wiring damage is so extensive that the car never fully recovers. Adding to this electronic disaster is steel quality that seems unworthy of a luxury brand. The W220 is notorious for its susceptibility to corrosion. It's not uncommon to see examples that, despite mechanical maintenance, show rust bubbles on the edges of the fenders, lower doors, and suspension mounts. The problem is so severe that, in some cases, the air suspension mounting points have completely detached due to weakened, corroded metal. Mercedes had to face class action lawsuits and perform massive warranty repairs. But in today's used market, this means that most of these cars are rolling junk requiring thousands of dollars in bodywork just to be structurally safe. The Airmatic air suspension, which we mentioned in other models, made its major debut here and was a total disaster. Distribution valves fail, level sensors lose calibration, and shock absorbers crack. It's a car that can leave you stranded in a parking lot simply because it decided it no longer wants to maintain its height. Add to this that the interiors of this generation use leather and plastics that degrade much faster than previous models, and you get an ownership experience that destroys the spirit of any enthusiast. The W220 is the perfect example of how a brand can ruin a decades-long reputation in a single product cycle. Number 1. Mercedes-Benz GL, 2007 to 2012. Taking the dishonorable spot as the worst model to own today is the first-generation Mercedes-Benz GL. This massive 7-seat SUV was primarily designed for the US market, aiming to compete with local luxury tanks. However, what Mercedes delivered was a giant with feet of clay. The GL condenses all the reliability failures of the brand's modern era into a bigger, heavier, and far more expensive to repair package. It's the vehicle that has led more owners to swear they would never buy a German car again. The hydraulic and suspension system in the GL is a constant source of financial anguish. Unlike sedans, the GL weighs nearly 2.5 tons, placing immense stress on every suspension component. Failures here are not a possibility, they're a statistical certainty. It's very common for owners to face bills of $10,000 to $12,000 to completely rebuild the suspension system and the power steering components, which often fail prematurely. Leaks in the steering rack are chronic, and hydraulic fluid can damage other engine components if not addressed immediately. Under the hood, engine options offer no solace either. The diesel variants, popular for their torque, suffer from the infamous oil cooler gasket problem. These few-dollar rubber gaskets are buried deep within the engine. Replacing them requires a mechanic to spend over 15 hours disassembling much of the intake and turbo system. A $10 parts repair turns into a $3,000 labor bill. Additionally, the V8 gasoline engines of this era suffer from balance shaft gear failures and plastic intake manifolds that crack internally, sending shards directly into the combustion chambers. The GL's complexity extends to its 4-matic all-wheel drive system and transfer case. Metallic noises and vibrations when turning at low speeds often indicate that the internal chain of the transfer case has stretched, a failure that requires replacing the entire unit. Adding to this, the electric tailgate control modules often burn out due to water leaks through the rear lights, creating a vehicle that's a constant cascade of dashboard errors. Owning a first-generation GL without a dedicated savings account is financial suicide. It's a car that impresses on the outside but can devour its owner's wealth with terrifying veracity. But not all news is bad. Now it's time to move on to the 5 best Mercedes models you can own because they are automotive gems. Let's see them. Number 5. Mercedes-Benz A-Class W212. The Mercedes-Benz E-Class with chassis code W212 is considered by many specialist mechanics as the last great tank made by the Stuttgart house. After the catastrophic quality failures of previous models, the brand needed to regain the trust of its most loyal customers, especially European taxi drivers and executives who demand longevity. The post-facelift model, produced roughly between late 2013 and 2016, represents the pinnacle of this effort to return to excellence. It's a car designed under a clear premise: simplify where necessary to ensure critical components don't fail prematurely. One of the strongest points of this generation is the evolution of the 4-cylinder diesel engines and the 6-cylinder gasoline engines. In diesel versions, the problems with piezoelectric injectors that plagued early production years were corrected, replaced with much more robust electromagnetic injection systems less prone to catastrophic failures. Meanwhile, gasoline engines in the 350 models abandoned the problematic timing gears of previous generations, adopting a much more reliable chain design that can easily surpass 300,000 kilometers without stretching. The 7-speed automatic transmission, known as 7 G-Tronic Plus, received software and hardware updates that drastically improved heat management, the main enemy of any gearbox. By keeping the fluid at constant temperatures, premature wear of the internal clutches and the oil-submerged electronic control unit is prevented. Additionally, Mercedes opted for a traditional mechanical suspension in most versions, avoiding the financial nightmare of air suspension systems. The result is a car that feels solid, quiet, and above all, doesn't surprise you with 4-figure bills every time it goes to the shop. The W212 E-Class is a car you can buy today with 100,000 kilometers, and have confidence that, with basic maintenance, it will provide another 200,000 kilometers without major issues. Number 4. Mercedes-Benz GLK 350. The Mercedes-Benz GLK 350 is one of those rare finds in the used market that enthusiasts desperately seek. With its angular boxy design paying homage to the legendary G-Class, this compact SUV hides one of the most reliable mechanical setups of the last decade. The key to its success lies in the naturally aspirated 3.5-liter 6-cylinder engine. In a world where all manufacturers shifted to small turbocharged engines to save fuel, Mercedes kept this large displacement engine that doesn't have to strain to move the vehicle's weight. Without turbos, the engine runs at much lower temperatures and with reduced internal pressures. This means seals, gaskets, and rubber hoses don't become brittle as quickly as in turbocharged engines. Additionally, the injection system is direct but simple, avoiding the complications of forced induction systems that often accumulate carbon on the valves. The GLK 350 shares components with the C-Class, meaning spare parts are abundant and relatively inexpensive compared to other brand models. Durability extends to the 4-matic all-wheel drive system. Unlike larger models like the GL or ML, the system in the GLK is lighter and better integrated, reducing vibrations and bearing wear. Owners often report a very predictable ownership experience. You know the car will start every morning and the only recurring expenses are oil, filters, and brakes. It's a vehicle built before the brand became obsessed with touchscreen controls for even the air conditioning, meaning the interior is a mix of high-quality physical buttons that won't fail due to software errors. The GLK proves that robust engineering always triumphs over unnecessary complexity. Number 3. Mercedes-Benz C-Class W204. The Mercedes-Benz C-Class W204, produced between 2008 and 2014, is the perfect example of how a brand can learn from past mistakes. After the rust and electronic failures of the previous model, Mercedes invested a record amount in developing this car. What makes the W204 so special is the balance it achieves between modern technology and mechanical simplicity. It was the last C-Class to use an electronic architecture that didn't rely on a constant internet connection to function, making it much easier to maintain long-term at independent workshops. In this model, Mercedes used much more durable materials for wiring and electrical connectors. Data bus failures, so common in the S-Class we discussed earlier, are virtually non-existent here. Control modules are better protected against moisture and heat. Additionally, most engines available on this platform are proven units refined over years. For example, the supercharged 4-cylinder in the C200 versions is an engineering gem, offering linear power delivery without turbo lag and enviable mechanical reliability. Another key aspect is the chassis. Corrosion protection was improved through a much stricter galvanization process, meaning even in cold climates with road salt, these cars maintain structural integrity. The interior, though perhaps not as luxurious as the S-Class, uses plastics and synthetic leathers designed to withstand the passage of time and heavy daily use. You won't see peeled buttons or panels creaking over every bump. By avoiding unnecessary electronics and overly complex suspension systems, Mercedes created a vehicle that is essentially an extremely efficient luxury transport tool. The W204 C-Class not only saved the brand's reputation, but set the gold standard for what a reliable premium compact sedan should be. Number 2. Mercedes-Benz SLK Class R170. The Mercedes-Benz SLK R170 is frequently overlooked by buyers seeking a practical car. But for the mechanically minded enthusiast looking for a reliable sports car, it's a true goldmine. This model, launched in the late 1990s, reintroduced the concept of the retractable hardtop, a marvel of engineering that, contrary to popular fear, proved extremely robust if given minimal maintenance of the rubber seals. However, the true treasure of this car is not its roof, but under the hood, specifically in versions equipped with the M111 engine. The M111 2.3-litre 4-cylinder engine is essentially a rock. It's an old-school design with a cast-iron block using a supercharger instead of a turbocharger. This technical choice is key to its longevity, as the supercharger isn't exposed to the extreme temperatures of exhaust gases, drastically reducing thermal stress on engine oil and internal components. It's an engine that allows unprecedented mechanical access. Almost anyone with a basic tool set and patience can perform preventive maintenance in their own garage. Components like the alternator, water pump, and thermostat are located in accessible spots, avoiding the need to disassemble half the car for a simple repair. Simplicity extends to its management system. While it had advanced electronic injection for its time, it's not overloaded with superfluous sensors that plague modern cars. The chassis is short and rigid, minimizing vibrations that often loosen interior components over time. The R170 SLK is a car built with a durability philosophy that seems forgotten in today's sports car segment. If you find a unit protected from corrosion and with roof hydraulic fluid changes every 5 years, you have a vehicle that can deliver pure driving sensations at a cost lower than many current economy compacts. It's the indestructible sports car that defies the logic that luxury convertibles must be a financial nightmare. Number 1. Mercedes-Benz E-Class W124. Talking about the Mercedes-Benz E-Class W124 is to talk about what many engineers and enthusiasts consider the best car ever built in human history. It was the last model developed under the philosophy of total over-engineering, where Mercedes-Benz's engineering department had absolute priority over the accounting department. Not a single bolt, gasket, or metal alloy quality was spared. This car was designed to last 500,000 kilometers before a major overhaul, and many examples have surpassed 1 million kilometers, working as taxis in the harshest desert or Arctic conditions. The key to its supremacy lies in material quality. Every switch in the interior has a weight and tactile feel, suggesting it was designed to be operated 10 million times without failure. The multi-link rear suspension, now an industry standard, was perfected on this chassis, offering a balance of comfort and control still impressive decades later. The engines available, from naturally aspirated diesels to inline 6-cylinder gas units, are legends of durability. Their timing chains are so thick they're nearly impossible to break, and cooling systems were designed to handle extreme workloads without the temperature needle moving an inch. The W124 is a masterpiece of logic. Everything in the car has a purpose and is placed where it should be. Repair ease is such that a mechanic with basic knowledge can diagnose almost any problem just by listening to the engine or visually inspecting components. It doesn't require sophisticated computers for repairs, ensuring it can keep running indefinitely as long as spare parts are available, which, fortunately, Mercedes still produces due to the enormous user base refusing to abandon this model. It's a car that conveys a solidity no modern vehicle loaded with plastics and screens can replicate. The W124 E-Class is and likely will remain the pinnacle of global automotive engineering. To identify an eternal Mercedes on the used market, one must look beyond shiny paint and the status granted by the star on the hood. The golden rule for any buyer is to seek mechanical simplicity and evidence of rigorous preventive maintenance. The verdict is clear. Mercedes-Benz can produce the best cars in the world when it chooses, but also the most complicated when it prioritizes ephemeral technology. By choosing one of the highlighted models on this list, especially those from eras where engineering ruled over cost saving, you're acquiring not just a means of transportation, but a piece of mechanical history designed to outlast trends. The true luxury of a Mercedes isn't in how many screens it has, but in the peace of mind knowing that, no matter the distance, the car will always get you to your destination. The key to mechanical eternity is respect for the machine and understanding that real quality is silent and felt in the solidity of every kilometer traveled.